termination. It's a word that can send a shiver down the spine of any project manager. It's high stakes, it's messy, and if you get it wrong, it can be financially catastrophic. So, how do you handle it without everything spiraling into chaos? Well, you open the playbook. And today, we're diving deep into the official playbook for construction projects, the FIDIC contract framework. So, let's just imagine for a second, your flagship, multi-million-dollar project is going completely off the rails. The budget's a wreck, the schedule is a distant memory, and the relationship between the parties is just broken. You know the feeling. It's that nightmare scenario. But before you hit the panic button, you need a plan. And that's exactly what FIDIC is. It's not an escape hatch. It's a detailed, step-by-step playbook for a controlled and predictable exit. You see, FIDIC doesn't leave something this critical up to interpretation or emotion. It's designed as a machine, a structured process for ending the contract. And it works the same way no matter who's at fault or what's going on in the world. The goal is simple, and you're going to hear it again and again. Process, not panic. Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the universal life cycle of any termination. Then we'll break down the 3 main ways it can happen. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you absolutely need to remember. Now, before we get into the who and the why, we have to lock down the how. And this is the single most important idea to grasp. Every single FIDIC termination, I don't care what the reason is, follows the exact same fundamental sequence of events. And this is it. Think of it like 7 gates you have to pass through, in order. It all kicks off with a trigger event. Something has to happen. Then a formal notice is given, which starts the clock on a cure period, a chance to fix the problem. Only if the problem isn't fixed can you issue the formal termination notice. The last 3 gates are all about the wrap-up, securing the site, figuring out who owes what, and handling any disputes. This 7-step process is the chassis for everything else we're about to build on. So that 7-step life cycle we just talked about, it gets applied across 3 very different scenarios. First, the employer can pull the plug, either because the contractor defaulted or just for their own convenience. Second, the contractor can terminate because the employer is in default. And third, there's a no-fault exit, where some massive external event makes it impossible for anyone to continue. All right, let's put ourselves in the employer's chair. Things are going wrong, you're losing patience, and you need to take action. FIDIC basically hands you 2 very different tools. Think of one as the referee's yellow and red cards for when the contractor is at fault, and the other as a political parachute for when you just need to get out of the project. Now, choosing between these 2 is a massive fork in the road with huge financial consequences. Terminating for default, that's the red card. It's for serious breaches, and it lets the employer go after the contractor for the extra costs of finishing the project. But terminating for convenience, the parachute, that's different. That's when, say, project funding gets cut. Here, the employer has to pay for all the work done, all the close-down costs, and, this is a big deal in the 2017 contracts, they might even have to pay for the contractor's lost profit. You have to get this choice right from the start. Okay, and if you are going down that default route, you have to listen to this. Before you can even think about showing a red card, you must show a yellow card. This is the notice to correct. It's a formal warning that says, here's exactly what you're doing wrong, here's the clause you're breaching, and you have X amount of time to fix it. Skipping this step is, without a doubt, the fastest way to have your termination thrown out and turned into a wrongful termination claim against you. All right, let's flip the script. What if the boot is on the other foot? What if it's the employer who isn't holding up their end of the bargain? Well, FIDIC gives the contractors some serious leverage here. It's a clear, powerful process of suspension and escalation to force the issue. And this timeline just shows you how that pressure builds. Let's say an employer doesn't pay an invoice. The contractor gives notice, and after 21 days, they can suspend work. And that right there, that gets attention. If that payment is still missing 42 days after it was due, boom, that's an official trigger for termination. The contractor then gives a final 14-day warning. If the employer still doesn't pay, the contract can be terminated. It's a deliberate, methodical march to the exit. And it's not just about late payments. The contractor can also terminate if the engineer is late issuing a payment certificate, if the whole project gets put on hold for way too long, or if the employer goes bankrupt. But here's a real game changer in the 2017 FIDIC forms. The contractor can now terminate if the employer simply ignores a binding decision from the dispute board. That gives the whole process some serious teeth. So we've covered contractor fault and employer fault. But what happens when it's nobody's fault? That brings us to our third and final pathway, the no-fault exit door. This is for when some massive external event just brings the whole project to a grinding halt. So, what counts? Well, in the 2017 contracts, it's called an exceptional event. You might be more familiar with the old term from the 1999 contracts, which was force majeure. It's the same idea, an event that's totally beyond anyone's control, that you couldn't have reasonably planned for, and that physically stops you from doing the work. And let's be clear, this isn't about the work getting harder or more expensive. It has to physically stop. And even then, FIDIC sets a really high bar. The event can't just stop work for a week or two. It has to prevent pretty much all of the work from happening for a continuous period of 84 days. Yeah, that's nearly 3 solid months of a complete project standstill. And there's one other trigger. If you have the same event causing multiple shutdowns, so you work for a bit, then stop, work for a bit, then stop, if all those periods of stoppage add up to more than 140 days, that also opens the door for either party to say, you know what, this just isn't working, and terminate the contract. I think this quote just nails the difference perfectly. An employer's termination for convenience is a policy decision. It's a choice. They've decided to change direction. This optional termination because of an exceptional event, that's a disaster decision. It's both parties looking at the situation and agreeing that some external force has made the project impossible. Phew. Okay, so we've covered the 3 main roads to termination. Let's boil this all down now into the absolute keys, the things you have to get right for a controlled and, more importantly, a defensible termination. First, and most importantly, follow the map. Termination isn't one action. It is a 7-step procedure. You have to follow it. Second, notices are everything. Your paper trail is your armor. Be specific, cite the clauses. Third, know which door you're walking through. Default, convenience, exceptional event, the financial results are worlds apart. Fourth, respect those cure periods. We talked about it, but it's worth saying again. Skipping them is a fatal mistake. And finally, just remember that the newer 2017 forms are much stricter and demand more discipline than the old 1999 versions. And that really leaves us with one final crucial thought. A termination done badly doesn't just fail, it can become a wrongful termination. And that completely flips the script, exposing you to millions in damages. The FIDIC contract gives you a very clear map to get through this minefield. The only question left is your team actually following it?